Hello everyone, this is part 13 of What If Naruto Got Lost During His Training TS, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. This next wall would just as tall as the previous wall, just as wide, and with one more additional level. But it wouldn't have any siege weapons on it. It would still have turrets and towers. The only long-range things on it would be the archers, long-range jutsu users, and magic users. Between this wall and the outermost wall would be a space that would be 20 feet wide, with the floor being covered in sharp pointly objects. Of course there would still be roads and stuff. The outermost wall would be 175 feet in height, and would be 10 feet wide, allowing only personnel to man it. There would be towers and turrets every 350 feet. This wall would have a total of 32 big gates. These gates would serve as entrances and exits to the fortress city. Within the city there would be parts reserved agriculture and for the care, breeding, and of livestock. The fortress would be self-sustaining. Around it Naruto, with the help of Token, would plant and grow a forest that would rival No Kuni's great forests. But before all that he had to do his thing. Tajuu no jutsu. He shouted and created 5 million extreme clones. These ones were just below the ones that stayed after S for a few minutes. They were living entities, sort of. One thing that set him apart from their creator was that they were still just Kage Bushin, modified, but still clones. Another thing is that even if they could get it up, that didn't mean that anything would come up. Naruto then assigned his older clones to gather the clones that they needed for their assignments. The first task that Naruto had to do was terraforming. The mountain and the moat would be the first things he conjured, transformed, etc. up. The surrounding forest would be made after his 3 companions would return from their surveying mission. Once the task of terraforming was completed, Naruto had to take a day-long break. It took him 24 straight hours of determination, willpower, and imagination to do it, but he did it, and he was exhausted because of it. Token, Hyakume, and Boruto had yet to return, but they did send updates every 100 square miles or so. Seeing as the basics of the layout of the fortress city were in place, the clones began setting up the foundations of the structures. The construction had begun. Naruto really didn't need to do anything anymore, but being someone who believed in hard work, he let his clones do everything. Instead of helping his clones, Naruto opted to do his own surveying of the land. So he prepared some storage scrolls, some with supplies, others that were empty. He wanted to know the lay of the land, as well as the conditions of life outside the now bloodless land. Token, Hyakume, and Boruto had decided to split up early on in their mission. Token would head north, Hyakume would head east. Boruto would head west. They each would communicate with one another and send reports back to Naruto via summon. Once they reached what they each perceived as the edge, they contacted Naruto, who then did all the calculations, since he had opted to travel southwards. They had more or less mapped the wasteland in the span of 10 weeks. Also, the fortress city was completed just as Naruto announced that the land that he now claimed as his had an area of roughly 34,507 square kilometers, think Taiwan. Auto FN, I know it not like me, but as for land area, let's just say that everything is bigger than usual. Sorry for the interruption. Also, as the 4 found out, the land was situated at the very center of 9 nations that were at war with one another. The land that Naruto claimed used to be the battleground, but due to the land being so far gone, the armies did battle elsewhere. Naruto sent back messages to the other 3 via the summons, that they would visit these 9 nations and see how everything with them is. He wanted to know the goings-ons of the time that he was in. Just by arriving he already had an inkling of what his task was to be. For an application lesson, his task was not a simple one. To confirm his hunch, Naruto and the 3 would be traveling the 9 lands. Token would visit the northern lands, Hyakume the eastern lands, Boruto the western lands, and Naruto would traverse the southern lands. 3 for each of Naruto's 3 companions, while he would be taking on the challenge of visiting the remaining 4. As soon as the 3 received their orders they started immediately. Naruto on the other hand went back to his fortress city. There was still something that he needed to do. Naruto more or less only had his 3 friends as real companions. With a city the size of the one that he had constructed, Naruto felt that it needed something. It was lacking something that was very important to a city, people. So he gathered up as much raw power as he could muster. All the while chanting, Recaligo Terra Voltus Angelo Vita, Recaligo Terra Voltus Angelo Vita, Recaligo Terra Voltus Angelo Vita, he chanted over and over as he gathered up his power. He didn't know how many he would be able to create. What he was going to create was something that he learned from Kyonshi, how to literally create life from non-life. He would gather earth, earth being one of the life givers, then he would shape it or sculpt it like clay, then with the air would breathe life into his creations. This was Naruto at his best and worst, he was literally playing God. These thing would be the next stage of evolution of golems. Once he was done, a great earthquake shook the ground, a storm formed overhead, thunder rolling loudly. The winds blew strong and fierce, followed by a dense fog. All of this happened within the span of a few short minutes. Once the fog dispersed, there were 2,000 individuals. These were nowhere near Kage Bushin. These were actual people, all of them adults. Naruto had recycled some lost souls that he detected on the battlefield and infused a part of himself with them to give them a firm hold onto the land of the living. In a sense it was necromancy, and a bit of alchemy, and some other things. They were clones of himself and of others. It was like Noah's Ark in a way, since Naruto had somehow breathed life and granted an evolving soul to these technically advanced golems, he made 2 equal sets of the genders. It was a ratio of 1 to 1. From this 1,000 he hoped that they would breed more people. It felt weird and a bit sick, and really weird, but it had to be done. Kyonshi did say apply everything he had learned, and this was just one of those things. After that he took a month-long break, he needed to acquaint himself with his citizens and/or creations. He also had to give them names, clan names, and the like. His clones were a big help with this. Aside from these new breed of people, Naruto also created 1,000 of each version of his modified clones to fill up the rest of the population. He had them all change their appearance and create identities for themselves. It was hard playing God, but for 1 month that is precisely what Naruto did. He kinda knew how Kyonshi must have felt in the beginning. To understand death, one must understand life, to understand destruction one must understand creation. And boy did Naruto understand. After the month was over and he began to leave for his new journey, he knew that he should not regret doing what he did, it had to be done, also he really was lonely. Having only clones as constant companions as well as some animals was a really lonely existence. His creations would be the foundations of his nation to be. At the time Naruto only thought that he now had people to go home to, that was enough for him. In the future, well, the future was the future. 3 weeks after leaving his fortress city, Naruto found himself in Naya no Kuni. He was in one of the few cities that remained from decades upon decades of war. Greed was a powerful thing. After the gold and diamond mines of the country had dried up, the daimyo looked to the other countries and wanted their wealth to be his, so he went to war with them. The other countries were of the same mind as he. So it was a 9-sided war. Naruto had to change his outfit in order to blend in. He looked like just some other mercenary. The city had a number of them loitering around the place. The city didn't really look like it had been in good shape for a long time. Naruto figured that it being a war-torn country, nothing would look good. But there was one building in the whole city that actually looked in good condition, and this building was the seat of power of the daimyo of Naya no Kuni. Apparently Naruto had stumbled upon the capital city itself. Being a traveler, Naruto went to one of the local pubs and asked around for some information as discreetly as he possibly could. He only brought out some copper coins when he absolutely had to. He learned that for decades many of the citizens of the 9 countries had been displaced, many had been forced to leave their homes, many had lost their lives by just being at the wrong place and the wrong time. There was poverty anywhere, and the only way to get a decent life was by joining the army. Sure, your life expectancy was short, but at least you had 3 square meals a day, a roof over your head, and clothes on your back. You were also paid 25 copper coins a day. That was a lot of money, compared to what other jobs paid people. Making his way through the city, Naruto went to the barracks of the city. He wanted to know what kind of firepower the military was worth. Getting in had been easy enough, so disguising himself as one of the regular soldiers he moved around and took note of all the things he saw. Doing nothing but walking around had called the attention of one of the officers, which led to Naruto being assigned guard duty of the prisons. The prison was a well-built building made solely of stone. The doors to each of the cells were made out of solid iron. Each cell was made to fit only 5 people each, but the soldiers had forced more than 10 to inhabit each cell. After snooping around a bit, as well as being treated as a greenhorn, Naruto learned that the prisoners weren't soldiers from the enemy, but civilians from one of the other 8 countries, as well as some citizens of their own country. The prison was where the daimyo kept all the people that he would sell on the black market as slaves. He needed funds to fund his war, and slaves were a commodity. He sold them in bulk. That was why the prisoners were packed in the cells worse than a can of sardines. The people in the cells were people taken from their homes, mostly women and children. The men were usually soldiers, or sent to work somewhere else. After his shift was over, Naruto decided to change his disguise again. He needed to infiltrate the castle. So he disguised himself as a doctor. There was talk of the daimyo looking for scared doctors. For what purpose Naruto didn't know. But he wanted to find out. Upon entering the castle, Naruto was brought to a room with a number of other doctors already in it. Apparently it was on the spot hiring. Some of the doctors didn't look anywhere remotely qualified. Naruto guessed that as long as you were willing to cut people up or something, you qualified as a doctor. Once the last applicant was brought into the room, everyone present was told to take a seat. Then they were given their instructions. A few people possessing unusual abilities had been found, and the daimyo wanted to have these people examined. He wanted to know how these people ticked, what made them work, and what made them so special. They were then each led to a different room, 1 doctor per room. In each room there were around 20 subjects, all of which were tied up or chained up. Basically they were all restrained. Naruto, like all the rest, was given some notes on the observed abilities of the individuals. Then they locked him in the room to do what he was told to do. Among the observed abilities there was one man that was supposedly blind, yet could see perfectly. There was another that was supposedly deaf, yet could hear perfectly. There was another who could tell what was what just by the smell. He was both deaf and blind. There was even a person that had his hand placed in a container. It was separated from his body, but it still moved. There was one little girl who was encased in some kind of metal binding or wrap. The notes said that it was to keep her from stretching. After looking over the notes for a while, as well as visually observing the other occupants in the room, Naruto concluded that most likely these people held within them the first Kekkei Genkai. A blind man who can see could possibly be an ancestor of the Hyuga. The girl who could stretch herself could probably be the ancestor of that guy in the Chunin exam. Naruto was actually starting to wonder if there was an ice user in the group. He didn't want to do what the daimyo wanted to be done, so he just wrote down what he observed, as well as what he could pick up using his powers. He had so many of those that it would be cheating to use them all. After about 6 hours of being stuck in the room, the door was unlocked and he was told to submit his findings for the day and return the next day. He was also given his pay for the day, which wasn't much. Once outside he returned to looking like a mercenary. Then he walked to the inn he was staying at for the duration of his visit. He planned on trying to get the people that he saw suffering a way out, not death mind you, but a way to somehow escape. Their treatment was inhumane. He may have grown up with something similar, but this was more extreme. He was an outer circle member of a bigger thing, and he only saw the basics. He could guess from that the other things that happened. It was possible that the daimyo, with the lack of food, might have opted to go with the Soylent Green approach. Due to the decades upon decades long wars, there wasn't enough food for all the people. Naruto really didn't want to find out if the Soylent Green approach was used. It was 15 minutes after midnight that Naruto entered shinobi mode. He had himself literally blend in with the shadows. He hopped from shadow to shadow until he reached medical room that he was in during the day. The subjects were still inside, still restrained, most of whom were sleeping, some of whom looked like they were a few of whom were already S. The daimyo must have had a number of these special people around for him not to have to worry about the health of one special individual. In the middle of the room, Naruto slowly detached himself from the shadows between two S-boss. Wispy tendrils of darkness escaped from his form as he rose out of the shadows, like eerily and creepily as if prolonging the inevitable fate of the occupants of the room. Once he was fully out of the shadows, the people saw what he looked like in the light. He was wearing an all-black outfit, save for a bone-white mask with the kanji for one on the forehead. The people were either too weak, too freaked out, or both to move or react to his appearance. Naruto then pointed at each individual, one by one sending a ball of darkness at them. Once it hit a person, the person looked like he or she had been disintegrated. Once the last one was vanished into the darkness, Naruto traveled via the shadows to another room, repeated his performance, then moved on to another room, then another, until all the specimens had been collected. In the shadow plane, it looked like there were families of people with similar traits and abilities. He then brought them to the outskirts of the city, where he had set up some cage bushens in preparation for his heist. The location was some ways away from any patrols. All of his clones were dressed in a similar manner as him, except their masks were black as pitch. There 500 of them all in all. Naruto had set up a temporary gate in the glade that the clones were in, and had brought out 5 50-foot-long dragons. Each one had a mountable wagon-like thing on their backs, which were usually used for carrying things, but in this case they would be carrying people, civilians. These 5 were jet black in color, even their bellies were jet black. The only thing on them that had a different color were their eyes and their insides. They had been made to await their cargo in a V-shaped formation. That was the sight that met the people once they were brought out of the shadow plane. As soon as the people were out, the clones sprang into action. They moved like blurs to the untrained eyes. They scooped up people one person at a time, and deposited them in the wagon mounts that the dragons had strapped to their backs. Once all the people were secure, Naruto silently ordered his clones to do their thing, which was to transport the people to home base. The clones that couldn't ride on a real dragon opted to create their own dragons, using wind as the main element. Once that batch of escapees were gone with the wind, Naruto melded back into the shadows, his next stop being the prison cells. But before he was one with the shadow, he created another set of 500 clones, and with the gate still in existence had 10 more dragons brought out. The cells being pitch black on the inside was ideal for Naruto to get people in and out. He had some clones read the files on the prisoners, and knew which ones to break out and which ones to let rot. The first cell that he reached, instead of appearing like he did in the medical labs, he just sucked people into the shadows, more than they already were. They only realized that they were no longer in the cells when there was absolutely no light, not even an inkling of it. Also, they didn't feel as cramped as they were in the cells. After the first cell, Naruto moved on to the next and the next and the next until he had no more people to gather up. The sight that greeted this new batch of people was even more intimidating than the previous group, since there were more dragons. Once out in the open, the clones burst into action and did their thing. After all the people were loaded into the transports, the clones created their own set of dragons and the whole flight took to the skies, heading for home base. Naruto's job for the night was over, so he transported himself to his room at the inn, and promptly went to sleep. Little did he know that his absence had been noticed. The next day at around the time of dawn, Naruto left the inn. After reaching a safe distance, he changed his appearance to his soldier look, then walked to the barracks where he would be having breakfast and would be assigned to who knows what. Naruto arrived to a very chaotic sight. The soldiers and prison guards were running here and there. Apparently his nighttime adventure had been noticed. He hoped that his medical labs hadn't been found to be empty yet. As soon as the officer that assigned him to prison duty saw him, he had Naruto join a platoon of soldiers that would be heading for one of the few remaining mines left in the country. There they would guard the mine and watch over the laborers. They were to make sure that none of the laborers escaped. Oh, the joys of Cage Bushin. Once the platoon reached the mine, they were joined by some other platoons. They traveled in separate routes in order for no one to know the way to where they were going. Seeing many platoons heading out would fool the enemy into thinking that the country's Naruto resources were still plentiful. Naruto, being one of the greenhorns, was given the task of guarding the cages in which the laborers were kept in at night. He noticed that the laborers were mostly young boys, young men, some older men, but very few seniors. So he asked one of the regulars where the old ones were, and the answer he was given was that they were at the factory. Factory of what? Where? Why were they there? Naruto wanted to know, but to ask too many questions may get him in trouble, so he just went back to his post and waited for their shift to end. It was nearing his time to appear at the castle for his stint as a doctor. So during a short break that he was given, he shadow walked to the castle gates and altered his look to look like a doctor. Once he entered, the guy in charge of the program informed him that he was no longer needed. They didn't want any of the docs to know that there was a major jailbreak. So Naruto went back to the mine, and resumed his vigil over the cages. Come nightfall, his shift finally ended, and the platoons left for home once their replacements had arrived. As the other soldiers made their way to their homes or wherever they lived, Naruto went on his way to the inn. He didn't immediately join the shadows, he once again waited for midnight before he acted. A few minutes past midnight, Naruto went to the place where he had first erected the temporary gate. He recruited another one for the night's deed. He brought out 10 rocks and 10 dragons. Each rock had a clone riding it, sitting on a specially designed saddle. Each dragon had 4 riders, one to give directions or orders, the other 3 as support. Naruto then gave them all the information they needed to finish the task. It would be a hit-and-run thing, well, more like a grab-and-fly-away thing. Once the flock and flight had left to complete their objective for the night, Naruto made his way to the industrial district in search of the factory where the senior prisoners or slaves were kept or made to work. What he found was definitely not to his liking. His fears were fact. Soylent Green was one of the food solutions of the country. Naruto suspected that the other 8 countries had similar plants or factories that mass-produced the stuff from the boss of the S and the Damned. There were very few people to save, but save them he did. He acted as fast as he could, he became the wind, his movements swift and sure, he pulled into the shadows all the living prisoners that he could get his hands on. In record time, the only boss that remained were those of the S. Naruto then made his way to the clearing. He created another temporary gate and had 1 dragon and 6 rocks come out. The dragon would serve as the transport, while the rocks its escort. Riding each of the beasts was 1 clone. The clones then dropped down from their saddles and gently brought each of the old men and women to the transport wagon on the back of the dragon. Once all were in it, they were off. Most of the people were in desperate need of medical attention, which Naruto's medical staff at home base would provide. Having accomplished the night's tasks, Naruto went back to his room for some much-needed rest. The next day Naruto went about his duties as an undercover agent in the army of the daimyo of Naya no Kuni. He didn't really pick up any clues as to the whereabouts of any more prisoners, slaves, and the like. But he did get some info on the date of the next attack on one of their neighboring countries. Naruto would make sure that he was part of the regiment that was deployed into the battle. That way he could travel to the other country without anyone being the wiser. Once he got back to the inn after a hard day's work, he went directly to his room, where he was greeted by the sight of a young man wearing the garb of a stable boy. "So, where y'are off to tonight?" the young man asked. "To bed," Naruto answered. "What are you doing in my room?" "I saw you last night and the other night," the young man said. "A few minutes past midnight you weren't in your room, then a few hours later you appeared in it." "Really? So now that you have caught and seemingly cornered me, what are you planning on doing?" "I was actually gonna ask if you needed any help. I mean, it's quite obvious that you're the brains behind the jailbreak operation. Why should I let you in? The country sucks, our lord sucks, I wanna be of use to someone, you know, being a stable boy, as fulfilling as it is, doesn't really let me do much. And so, come on, gimme a chance, I know you've been doing your thing cause you wanted to help those people. Since I was clumsy, and you did more or less catch me in the act. I'll let you in on my operation. Alright, so when do I start? What do I do? First you tell me your name." "Right, sorry, forgot about introductions," he said. "The name's Yahiko, Shokan Yahiko." "Nice to meet you," Naruto said. "You can call me Rosuto." "Nice to meet you too." The 2 men shook hands. "So what you got planned for tonight?" "Tonight? Nothing, but since you're a part of my rescue operation now, you'll be doing the rescuing and stuff. I'll lend you some of my men." "Me? Why aren't you leading in this?" "Cause once the army gets deployed, I'm going with them. I need to get into another country. I have a distinct feeling that all 9 warring countries have got a lot of people problems. So, you're leaving me in charge of your operations here in Naya, so you can start another branch in one of the other countries." "Yep. So, when do I meet your men?" "Now." As soon as Naruto said that, the 2 of them were in the glade that Naruto had been using to summon up his clones and stuff. How? WWR. Magic, let's leave it at that. Oh okay. Then Naruto created another temporary gate. This time 100 of his disguised ultimate clones stepped out of the gate. All of them had storage scrolls with them, which held various tools and supplies. They were all in shinobi mode. They all had on a crimson mask with the kanji for one in black on the upper half of their masks. Beneath their masks they wore a portable radio, the range being 1 mile. It was the earpiece type of walkie-talkie. These 100 are under your command. Naruto then handed Yahiko his own set of the communication device. This is how you will get in touch with them. Then he proceeded to demonstrate how the thing was used. He explained how the operation was to be done, but more or less everything else was up to him. Naruto's men would be the ones to take care of how the future refugees would get to home base. 2 weeks after first arriving in the capital of Naya no Kuni, Naruto found himself dressed in full military gear. His other stuff was safely tucked away in the shadow plane. He was marching along with the rest of his assigned platoon. They were off to battle, and for him his death. The battle was quick, neither side coming out on top, both sides losing a number of men. For the Naya side, Naruto was one of the losers. During the battle he used a Chiseo Bushin to fake his death, while at the same time transforming himself to look like a field medic of Nasu no Kuni. He successfully integrated himself into the army of Nasu, and went back to the Nasu capital with them. He was once again treated as a rookie, but this time of the medic corps. The capital of Nasu was not that different from the capital of Naya. The place hadn't seen better days for decades upon decades. The daimyo's residence was just as well kept as Naya's. The people were just as gloomy. Everything was the same. Except, Nasu still had a food supply, a dwindling one, but there was still enough for the populace. No Soylent Green in this country, thank Kami. Naruto was made to stay with the family of one of his fellow field medics, by the name of Gimen Ryu. He and Naruto both found similarities with one another. Both did not approve of the way POWs were treated, as well as the abductions and unjust arrests of some of the people. Ryu's family was lucky that he was part of the army, else there would have been a big chance that someone in his family would have been taken by the army either to work in one of the labor camps or to be sold on the black market as a slave. This country, like the previous one, lacked gold, that being the reason why so many women and children were disappearing, almost never getting the chance of seeing their families again. The only ones that were spared were the ones that opted to join the army without pay. Being a member of the medic corps made gathering information hard for Naruto. He had to resort to using disguised cage bushins to get information on the whereabouts of the various holding facilities, prisons, and the like. Getting the coordinates or general locations was the easy part. Getting he people out was another thing altogether. Apparently only the senior or veteran members of the army were assigned to guarding such facilities, therefore it really would take a lot of planning for the rescue missions to be successful. After the first week of staying with Ryu and his family, Ryu found out about Naruto's secret life. He figures it out by seeing Naruto talk to or chat with a number of strange or odd individuals who normally wouldn't stand out. After blackmailing Naruto into confessing, Ryu too, like Yahiko, wanted in. With 2 men working on a plan for the rescue operations, the workload got easier. That is until the army had to go to the battlefield again. Which meant that Naruto and Ryu had to find some way that they would be paired up. Luckily they were, unluckily they were literally sent out into the field of battle. The last battle left the army short on manpower, and so they had to resort to using some of the non-combatants as combatants. It was a good thing that Naruto had experience in the fighting field. He was able to defend his friend and himself. After the battle was over, and still no victor had come out, Naruto decided that it would be the perfect time to implement the plans that he and Ryu had come up with. Nasu no Kuni's capital had 10 places all in all that kept the oppressed people that Naruto and Ryu wanted to liberate. There were POWs, people that were just taken from the streets, people that were too poor to pay off debts. There were even a few people that had the original Kekai Genkais. 10 locations, each one housing roughly 200 to 500 people all in all. There were probably more spread out around the country, but Naruto would only be able to do his thing in the city that he was in. The countries, though big as they were not proportionate to the number of people that were living in them. Each of the countries only had populations ranging from 1 to 5 million people. But Naruto estimated that after 1,000 years or more the population would increase, that is if the land got better. Nasu's capital was a lot bigger than Naya's. Over in the industrial zone there were 3 factories where slaves, mostly men and young boys, were made to make armor and swords for the army. They were kept in 3 warehouses that were converted into a prison of sorts. They were separated by age group. Also in the industrial zone there were 2 other factories where women and younger girls were made to mass produce the clothes that the soldiers wore beneath their armor. They were also kept in warehouses, ones that were nowhere near the men's. 2 platoons were stationed to guard each of the places where the slaves were kept. These soldiers were ones that rarely saw the battlefield. But they did see battle. Every now and then one of the slaves would try to escape. The punishment was death. A slow and painful one performed by one of the soldiers. They looked at it as some sort of sport. In the military district there was one holding facility for POWs. The ones held here were basically just soldiers of the other countries that had been captured during battles. Instead of being ked, the daimyo got a kick out of seeing his enemies suffering. These men, and a few women, were not ked outright, but they SD due to blood loss, starvation, sickness, accidents, and a bunch of other things. Nasu's POW prison held up to around 500 prisoners. It was a POW-only prison. There was another prison right next to the building. It was where criminals and the like were kept. But most actual criminals were given pardons if they opted to join the army and fight on the front lines. But most of the other prisoners were just people taken off the streets, or people from villages, cities, and towns from other nations which the army pillaged and plundered. Basically for all the country's regular citizens were treated as livestock. Sure, people are a resource in themselves, but the 9 countries saw people as more than that. People were goods, objects, things that held monetary value. This other prison or holding facility held some 400 individuals. Just 400 because most of the ones taken to it soon get sold, traded off, or ked immediately. A bunch of slaves were cooped up in the dungeons of the castle, being given only what they need to survive and go about the daily chores. Some of them, women specifically, were used for entertainment and most likely were treated somewhat better. A group of suffering people were in the medical district. These people were given false hopes and promises for cures and the like for their problems. The last group of sufferers were those that were to be transported to parts unknown to Naruto. That was part of the reason why he decided that tonight was the night when Nasu would experience a breakout of such magnitude. As Naruto left Ryu's place to find a place to prepare, Ryu went around the city gathering people of like mind to himself and Naruto who would help with the plan. It was a coup d'etat on a very small scale. Most of the people that Ryu had recruited were medical practitioners like himself. Ryu and his people would meet up with Naruto and his people, wherever Naruto would set up as the temporary base of operations. Ryu had gathered some 20 other people. Hopefully they were enough, since Ryu knew that Naruto had a number of his people already in the city. Ryu didn't really know why he bothered to go along with Naruto. He didn't really know why he decided to help Naruto do the right thing. Even though there were times where the thought of his family getting caught up in something really bad, Naruto had something in him that made Ryu think that everything would be okay in the end. Later, at around 10 in the evening, Ryu found a note left by Naruto with directions on where to go. So Ryu and his accomplices followed the directions which led them to one of many abandoned buildings in the city. Once in the designated floor, in the designated room as written in the note, Ryu and company found themselves in the presence of one of Naruto's clones. This one was wearing Naruto's field medic uniform. But Ryu didn't know that it was a clone. Also the clone was wearing a hat to hide his hair, and a face mask to hide most of his face. Good, you're here. And as I suspected you brought friends, Dr. Naruto said. Yeah, about that. Sorry I didn't check with you first, Ryu said. It's alright, no need to apologize. The more the merrier, right? Naruto said. Let's get down to business. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not our base of operations. I had you come here so that if anyone followed you or was suspicious of you, they would be led here instead of to our base. That's very cautious of you, one of the other doctors said. Safety first, Naruto stated. Now, Ryu, don't panic, alright? Huh, why would I panic? Ryu asked. The others wondered that as well. This is why, Naruto said as he used the wind to whisk Ryu away to their base of operations. At the sight of this the others started to panic, thinking that perhaps it was a trap by one of the people of the daimyo. But before they could run away they too were whisked away via the winds. Dr. Naruto stayed behind. The abandoned building may not be the actual base of operations, but it would be one of the pit stops or checkpoints that Naruto had set up all over the city via his clones. The refugees or escapees would have to pass through these places in order for them to reach the base, from which they would be sent to Naruto's fortress. Dr. Naruto created a few clones of his own, regular Kage Bushin that would serve as his aides as well as support and lookouts. The clones set up a perimeter around the place, as well as installed a number of traps and early warning systems around and in the place. They turned the place into a mini fortress that looked nothing like a fortress. The clones were prepared for anything. Dr. Naruto, before heading for his present location, acquired some things that would make defending the place easier. He had come prepared with weapons, armor, and other supplies that would allow his own clones to last longer than they normally would. There were 19 other checkpoints that were occupied and run by Dr. Naruto clones, with their own small band of Kage Bushin. The medical practitioners, upon arriving at Naruto's base of operations in Nasu, were surprised to find themselves at the center of an actual base. It was a small military camp being run by Naruto's medic clones. Unlike the clones that had been deployed in Naya, these ones all wore the uniform of different medical professions. All of them wore masks and their hair was of different colors. On their sleeves was the kanji for the number 2. The camp was buzzing with activity, most of which was concentrated around Naruto and his temporary gate. Supplies were being brought in bulk. Some rocks and dragons were also making their way out of the gate and into the camp. Instead of screaming, shouting, or panicking, Ryu and his volunteers were stunned into silence. They had never dreamed of actually seeing so many people of their field in one place, all of whom were working for Naruto, or Rosuto since that was what he told them to call him. There were tents everywhere. They were actually on one of the mountains a few miles away from the city. It was very rocky terrain, and most folks avoided climbing up, due to the great chance that they would slip and fall to their deaths. Most of the supplies were medical supplies, but there were crates with armor, some with clothing, some with food, some with weapons as well. There were also several things that Ryu's group had yet to encounter, these things being some of Naruto's advanced technology, advanced for Ryu's time at least. Hey, Rosuto. What's all this? Ryu gestured to the camp. My base of operations in Nasu. That's what it is, Naruto answered. Base of operations. In Nasu. You mean you've got camps like this one in other countries? One of the other doctors asked. Yep. At present I have one in Naya, a smaller one, but it's got around 100 or so of my people working there. I got more here though. Why? Another one asked. 'Cause it's the right thing to do. Many need help, and well, I got the resources, so I might as well. But what if the authorities find out? Another one asked. I mean, sure you got these guys helping you out, but can you stand up to the army? Naruto smiled as one of the dragons passed by the group. On its back were 5 shinobi clones, all of whom had crossbows in their hands. I think I'll manage it. So, what do you need us for? Ryu asked. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.